The offseason continues to progress at a rapid rate, and it's been a minute since the Devils made a move. And also, let's reflect on Jacob Markstrom's 2024-2025 season. There's a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. On today's episode, we're going to do a retrospective episode on Jacob Markstrom. I've talked heavily about Jake Allen in prior episodes, but I felt as though it is Marky's turn because I think he was a big reason why the Devils didn't fall off a cliff as the season progressed. He had a really good year in between the pipes, a team that has been searching for answers when it comes to goaltending. They found it when it came to Markstrom, and I think he's been as good as advertised. But that'll be a little later in the episode. You will also hear from Markstrom during exit interviews. But to kick off today's episode, let's talk about the offseason so far for the Devils. It's mid-July, so let's do a mid-offseason check-in, if you would. The Athletic recently published report cards for every team's offseason up to this point, and they gave the Devils a B+. I don't really know how to feel about that assessment because the Devils have made solid moves, but nothing really spectacular. So let's do a recap. They extended Jake Allen, which I liked. Allen took a hometown discount. He signed a 5-year extension. However, his average annual value is very cheap. So as that contract progresses and Father Time catches up to Allen, you can either hide it in the minors, you can buy him out, put him on LTIR. There's so many options to go with. So I like that move by Tom Fitzgerald because not only do you get Allen back, who was a good backup to Markstrom, but it doesn't really hurt you in the grand scheme of things. It has tremendous upside for the Devils. Now, when it comes to free agency, the Devils signed Evgeny Dadonov, who had a productive year with the Stars. He's getting up there in age a little bit, but if he's able to repeat that success that he saw in Dallas, then maybe the Devils found a gem. They needed depth scoring, and I think Dadonov can definitely provide that. They also signed Connor Brown to a 4-year deal. I think Brown will slide in nicely to Halla's role. Once again, provide some depth scoring, can play in all sorts of scenarios for Sheldon Keefe. But it's nothing spectacular. It's a solid move. So what do I think of the offseason so far for the Devils? Well, I think Christy Flannery of the Hockey News articulated it really well in one of her latest articles. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to hear her full thoughts. But she shared on her social media platform that as we hit the midway point of July, the Devils forward group appears incomplete. Connor Brown and Evgeny Dadonov were good additions, but if New Jersey wants to take the next step, the lack of a true third-line center and top 6 left winger will be problematic. And she's absolutely right. Let's look at the projected lineup for the Devils and see where they stack up for the time being. According to Daily Faceoff, the top line for the Devils will be Andre Palat, left wing, Jack Hughes, center, Jesper Bratt, right wing. Obviously, we know that Hughes and Bratter are a great dynamic duo. Nicknamed Peanut Butter and Jelly, they'll both rack up a decent amount of points. I hope Hughes can stay healthy this time around. Bratt has been one of the more consistent players the past few seasons for the Devils. He's always healthy. I know he also got surgery during the offseason, but Tom Fitzgerald says that he's recovering well. Not really worried about that. Andre Palat, what you see is what you get. He's a solid forechecker. He's not really going to do anything spectacular, and I think you got to come to accept that if the Devils do hold on to him. The second line, Timo Meier left wing, Nico Hischier center, Stefan Noesen right wing. Here's the thing. I think Timo Meier could be a better contributor if he was given a bigger role and if he was playing at his correct position. I've had this talk with other Devils content creators, and this goes back to the Lindy Ruff days. Timo always plays left wing despite being a right winger. And not only that, it doesn't seem like he's given a significant role on the power play unless someone goes down with an injury. We saw in March when Jack Hughes went down with his season ending injury, Meyer really filled the shoes nicely and was very productive during the month of March, was given a bigger role on the power play. So I think Timo could be so much better if played at his correct position and also given a bigger role. That's just my 2 cent opinion. Stefan Noesen, he was really good for Devils. He told me his job is to add more snarl on the Hischier line, which he does that. One of the best net front presence in the NHL. The top 6 is solid, but going back to what Christie said, there has to be somebody better than Palat to sort of fill that role. And then when we look at the bottom 6, left wing, you got Arseny Gritsiuk, Dawson Mercer at center, and Connor Brown at right wing. Mercer has shared that he would much rather play at the wing as opposed to the center. And he understood why Sheldon Keefe had him play center to close out the season because Jack Hughes went down with his injury. So Mercer had to fill that role. But this goes back to the point I made about Timo. If Mercer is playing at his natural position and feels more comfortable, maybe you would see better production from him. Gritsiuk, I have no doubt he's going to be great, but do you really want to put all your trust in a rookie to really bolster the bottom 6? Then the fourth line, you got Paul Cotter, left wing. He definitely brings aggression, isn't afraid to throw his weight around. I think it's going to come down to consistency with Paul Cotter. That's what got him in trouble in Vegas. Cody Glass, fourth line center. I'm okay with that. He was pretty solid in the few games he appeared in with the Devils, and I was glad that the Devils brought him back. Then you got Evgeny Dodonov. Like I said, up there in age. Will he be able to contribute much for the Devils? So there you go. That's your forward group for the Devils. And similar to what Christie said, it feels somewhat incomplete. Something is missing. So when it comes to Dodonov and Brown, they're solid additions, but they're not really going to move the needle all that much. And I mean that respectfully. Defensive pairings, Tom Fitzgerald has revealed that's going to stay intact for the most part. So Brendan Dillon, Dougie Hamilton, Luke Hughes, Brett Pesce, Jonas Siegenthaler, and for the time being, Shimon Nemeth, since Jonathan Kovacevic won't be ready to go to begin the year. So going back to what the Athletic said, giving the Devils a B+ for the offseason, I get it. The Devils didn't really have much money to work with, but they still haven't done the 2 biggest things that I think was on their agenda this offseason, which is extend Luke Hughes, give him a new contract, and try to get Andre Palat off the boards. We've been talking about this in the Pucks and Pitchforks group chat. I think the Devils are doing whatever it takes to try to get rid of Palat, but he's making it a little difficult because he has trade protection. He sort of has a say as to where he does or doesn't want to be dealt to. This is just a guess, but when looking at his modified no movement clause, I think the few teams that are added onto that list are Chicago, Anaheim, and San Jose. No disrespect to any of those organizations, but they're not really playoff teams, and Palat has only played on playoff caliber rosters, albeit he's only played for 2 teams, but Palat is an established champion. He's up there in age. I don't think he has much interest in going to a rebuilding organization or a team that's still a few years away from reaching the playoffs, even though I'd say all 3 organizations are heading in the right direction. So that's where we're at. I'm not going to give the Devils a B+. I'll give them a solid C because, like I said, they did make some moves. They got rid of Eric Holla for a salary dump. They had to do that. They extended people like Cody Glass and Jake Allen. I'm also good with that. They brought on Connor Brown and Evgeny Dodonov, but all those moves are solid. They're not spectacular, but not the worst either. So I would give the Devils anywhere from a C plus to a C. B plus is damn near acing it. Like you almost got an A on it. And I don't think the Devils are close to that sort of letter grade. I would have to agree with Christy. I think the roster is still somewhat incomplete. The Devils will be a playoff team. That's not what I'm concerned with. Have they done enough to reach the next level? And as the offseason progresses, I'm growing a little more concerned. And as you guys know, I'm one of the more optimistic Devils content creators out there. So if and when they do unload Palat's contract and then they extend Luke Hughes, is there anyone else available on the trade market to add on to the roster to really take the Devils to the next level? Or is that going to be it? You just get rid of Palat, use the money that you have left over to extend Luke Hughes, and you just say, you know what, we're going to roll with the group that we have this upcoming year, and then we'll just wait until next offseason to really up the ante. So that's where I stand with Fitzgerald, the front office, and how the Devils are presently constructed. But there's one area that I'm not concerned with, and I mentioned it to kick off today's episode, and that is the goaltending tandem of Markstrom and Allen. And we're going to talk about Markstrom's 2024-2025 season momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every moment more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, let's reflect on Jacob Markstrom's 2024-2025 season. If you recall, 2024 offseason, the Devils were in search of a new goalie. They already had Jake Allen, but they knew Allen could not be the go-to guy. You got to get a starter in front of him because the more you ask out of Jake Allen at his age, the more likely it's not really going to pan out. So Tom Fitzgerald got Jacob Markstrom. I know a lot of people were saying like, oh, he should go get Connor Hellebuck or someone like that. And I said, that's not realistic. I think Jacob Markstrom was the more realistic choice. The Devils traded away their first round pick from this year's draft. So that's why the Devils didn't have a first round pick in Los Angeles. And they also parted ways with Kevin Ball and they got Jacob Markstrom. And remember, the Flames are retaining about 33% of his contract. So having Allen and Markstrom on the roster at a discounted price, that was actually a good bargain for Fitzgerald. Going into the season, I expected Markstrom to really take the Devils to the next level because I said, like, if they just get a goalie, I think they have a better shot than they did the season prior because Vitek Vanacek and Akira Schmid, they just weren't going to cut it. The Devils tried not once but twice with them. It just didn't work out. In comes Jake Allen. Later comes Jacob Markstrom, and Markstrom was good as advertised. He appeared in 49 games. He had a win-loss record of 26, 16, and 6. He had a .900 save percentage, a goals against average of 2.5, and he had 4 shutouts. Remember, Allen also had 4 shutouts. So between the two of them, and if you want to add Dawes' lone shutout as well, the Devils goalies had 9 shutouts between all 3 of them, which I found rather impressive. I'd argue and say that Markstrom and Allen were one of the best goaltending duos in the NHL. One of, not the best. So don't take what I just said out of context. I wholeheartedly believe that if Markstrom didn't get injured in January, then he would have been in the running for the Vezina trophy. Obviously, he wasn't going to win it because Hellebuck won not only the Vezina, but also the Hart trophy. So no one was really going to stop Hellebuck, barring anything catastrophic happening to him, which I do not wish that upon him. Let me make that clear. But getting back to Markstrom, I think the injury kind of threw him back a little bit. It took him a while to really get back into a groove of things once he came off the injured list, but he was really a bright spot for the Devils during the playoffs, and he really did help keep his team in it. The Devils didn't really stand that big of a chance against the Hurricanes, especially with how depleted their roster was due to injuries. But for an organization that's been searching for a go-to goalie for so many years, Markstrom was what Devils fans were praying for. And it's such a shame that we didn't get the chance to see Markstrom appear in Four Nations because he was set to play for Team Sweden alongside Jesper Bratt. But hey, we saw him at Worlds and he did really well. And Sweden finished third in that tournament, I believe, and Markstrom played a big part. Markstrom spoke during exit interviews and he talked about some of the lessons he learned. He also talked about his injury circumstance. Take a listen.
What do you think the most valuable thing you learned about what this group is capable of doing?
I mean, the most important thing, and for me, looking at this team before I arrived, and then obviously coming here, I think we got it. It's not far off, and I think that's we just got to get get on the same page, and myself included, got to play a little bit more consistent over the course of the season, and carry that over into the playoffs. So we need to take some steps this summer. I got to take some steps and come back a little bit better next year.
As a full group, what does that mean when you say take those steps or maybe get on the same page kind of thing?
Well, for me, I mean, when you look at the games we played, and I think certain times during the season we were, you're walking in the room and you're going to win the hockey game. It was, you feel unbeatable, and that's the feeling we got to carry in for more games than we did. I feel like, and just overwhelmed teams, and we're capable of it, and everybody's seen it, and everybody felt it. We just got to be able to bring that out more consistent.
Well, you got here, this team has it. After a year of being here, do you still think this team's right there?
Yeah, even more so. I think like I said, it's not far off. We just got to do a few things a little bit differently, and goalie play a little bit better, and that's an easy fix.
For yourself, do you have any personal goals that you want to reach? I know it's a quick turnaround, but for next year, any personal goals for you?
Win every game. That's my goal for next year.
Okay, how challenging was suffering that injury, working to come back, and maybe finding your groove again? And maybe how did that challenge you as an individual and as a goalie?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough for sure. And for me, I try to look at it as obviously the Four Nation break came at a good time, but then the first game at the puck drop, Sweden Canada, you're watching the game at home. It felt like it was an awful time. So it's it's an emotional roller coaster for sure, and it's but you take lessons from it, you learn from it, and then you kind of when you come back and you're working to get back, and you're eager to get back.
I love Markstrom's personal goal. Win every game. Amanda Stein, Tom Fitzgerald, all of them have said that Markstrom is the ultimate competitor. He wants to win every single game. And honestly, I'm not surprised by that. I remember speaking to Markstrom in St. Louis about it, and he said, like, look, I know I won the game, but I felt as though I should have made a few more saves, because I think the Devils beat the Blues 4-2, just trying to remember off the top of my head. And Markstrom performed really well, but he wasn't really happy with the goal or two that he let up. But anyway, Markstrom, ultimate competitor, and he talked about consistency and the steps that the team needs to take in order to reach the next level. We heard Kovacevic speak about the matter in the previous episode when we were breaking down his season. Like I said, Markstrom, great player, and I'm glad that he's a member of the Devils, and he's one of my favorite people to interview because sometimes you can get a funny soundbite. So when he says win every single game, I respect that. But I hate to be this person. I do have one concern when it comes to Markstrom, and we're going to talk about that momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've actually used Indeed before to get myself some play-by-play gigs. I use it to this very day. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support my show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Okay, what am I concerned with when it comes to Markstrom? Well, let's play his soundbite in which he talked about his contract and the tandem between himself and Allen, and then I will share my thoughts. Take a listen.
How was your tandem with Jake Allen, and was that tandem different than maybe other tandems experienced in your career?
Yeah, I mean, he's, now we're the two old guys, so it's, usually the last decade I had a younger guy with me, and I feel like it's been unbelievable. Jaker, like you all know, is a great guy and a great person, and he's been playing unbelievable whenever he was called upon, and, he's a great locker room guy, and I got nothing but great things to say about him. He's awesome.
Given any thought going into the last year contract that maybe you want to stick around a little longer here? I know you have that 1 year left, but has there been any thought to want to stay a little longer than the next year?
I mean, it's you obviously want to live in the moment and take it day by day, but absolutely, if Fitzy want to call, I'm picking up.
A lot of people aren't talking about this because I guess it's a little too soon to discuss it, but I'm just going to put this into the light. This upcoming season will be Markstrom's final year of his contract, and he will turn 36 in January. So he talked about how he and Allen, they're a little older when it comes to the goaltending dynamic because usually you have the veteran as a starter, then you have the young up-and-coming player behind him. Not the case for the Devils. They have two veteran goalies, and hopefully Fitzy is able to work out a contract extension with Markstrom in the similar type of structure that was given to Allen. Team-friendly contract, and it won't come back to bite the Devils, but the big question that I have for both Markstrom and Allen is that how many more years of good service do they have in the NHL? So with the Devils' current roster construction, they're not Stanley Cup contenders, but at the same time, I don't want them to ruin a good goaltending tandem that they have of Markstrom and Allen because opportunities like that don't come around all that often. I said it before and I'll say it again. Markstrom and Allen were one of the better goaltending duos in the league, combining for 8 shutouts. Both of them were very reliable for the most part. I know you got players like Mike Yegorov, Jacob Malik in the pipeline, but we don't know how they're going to develop a few years from now. And do you want to put that sort of pressure on their shoulders? But obviously, I'm just speculating at this point. I don't think Nico Dawes has much time remaining as a member of the Devils. That's just my one concern when it comes to Markstrom. And unfortunately, it's something that every player has to deal with at some point, and that's your age, because Father Time is undefeated for a reason. But you know what? That's a few years from now. Let's focus on the present. Markstrom, Allen, great goalies for the Devils. And I'm glad that they brought a lot of excitement in between the pipes. And I think this is what Devils fans have been praying for many, many years. It's been a struggle when it comes to goalies and the Devils ever since Martin Brodeur retired, because we know how Corey Schneider ended up, Mackenzie Blackwood ended up, Vitek Vanchek ended up. Akira Schmid ended up, or how Keith Kincaid ended up. Keith Kincaid is in the ECHL right now, playing for Savannah Ghost Pirates, for reference. But that's where I'm going to leave things. Share your thoughts. How would you assess the Devils offseason up to this point? And what did you think of the goaltending tandem of Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.